Well, joining me on the line to help me unpack this, it's Imran Shah, spokesperson for Muslim Public Affairs Committee. It is a UK's leading organization for empowering Muslims to focus on intelligent political activism to demand their rights. Brother Imran, thank you so much. Good afternoon and good morning to you in the UK.
Good afternoon to you guys in South Africa.
It's a pleasure speaking to you, Imran Shah. Well, hey, let's look into this issue. Came up with Tell Mama about anti-Muslim incidents. What do you read up on this particular situation, or rather, how would you comment on this?
So this is reinforcing something that's very well known for a long time. One is that rhetoric that is made by media, but also prominent politicians, generally leads to violence on the street. So people take that as something to get angry about, and they actually take initiative to cause violence on others. And so it's almost like in the playground. If someone's ridiculed enough, they eventually become bullied. And that's what's kind of happening on a social level. And this time it's the Muslims that are facing that. So, this is a well-known phenomena. It's now being reiterated and discussed immensely now when it comes to Muslims. The last time we talked about this was, as a society in the UK, was probably in the 70s and the 80s when racism was rife, and now it's really starting to become a topic again. The ironic thing is that obviously when it comes to, given that the target is now Islam and Muslims, what they couldn't get away with race is saying what they're saying now is that to criticize a faith or to criticize someone's religious practice is just simply free speech. Whilst criticizing someone's skin color, that's just because you can't choose your skin color essentially, and that enables these Islamophobes to kind of a get out card. Not so much so that they're trying to essentially make sense, but it stops them from answering and being accountable to the bigotry and essentially the racism that they're illustrating and reinforcing and advocating in positions of power and on the street itself.
Well, in the United Kingdom, Imran, let's look into the levels of anti-Muslim hatred or Islamophobia. They've remained stubbornly high, isn't it?
Yes, and that's partly because when it comes to the government in power, they have an institutional Islamophobia problem, so they're unwilling to actually draft legislation to deal with this problem effectively, and also because the politics of the day, the Brexit's like the big elephant in the room, and behind the elephant is essentially the racist, the xenophobic, the anti-EU, which also means anti-immigrant and anti-people of colour sentiment that is still at centre stage of our politics. And a lot of people are opposed to Brexit simply because of the right-wing politics that's driving that. And they see Brexit as more as a right-wing sort of a coup or a plot to force the country towards something that's going to be dangerous for everybody across the board. So there's many different factors, but Brexit, as well as the ruling party's history of racism and in this particular case Islamophobia, is the thing that's allowing the bigotry to run high. And like, it's not just simply about legislation. This government has actually produced policies such as prevent counter-extremism, as well as produced quote-unquote grassroots organizations, because they've not been willing to engage with genuine, authentic grassroots organizations that have been built by Muslims in the UK for over the decades. So literally they've sidelined everybody that's criticized them, and instead of engaging with the Muslims and the representative of Muslims civically and democratically, they've just created their own organizations and made them out to be like, oh, we're actually engaging with these Muslim organizations, but they're obviously of their own creation.
How bad it is under the leadership of Boris Johnson?
This is, he's never had any qualms in being racist when it comes to his pursuits of power, and I think he's seen Brexit in particular is a mean to essentially test his worth in staying in power. It's like a gamble for him, and he will and has been looking to use racism and Islamophobia as a means to do so, to win that election. But the thing is that, like, I mean, we as an organisation, we will be trying to get Boris Johnson out of power, out of his seat in when the next election is called. And he's actually not in a safe seat at all. So he has around about just over 3,000 votes majority. That's how much he won by the last election. But there's at least 5,500 Muslims in that seat alone. And so given that a lot of people are trying to rally to get him out of power anyway, we will be one of them. The Muslim vote in itself is capable of getting this Prime Minister out of power. And, you know, there's a strong precedent given that he's been blatantly Islamophobic. And that will be historic because it will be the first time in, I believe, in British history that a Prime Minister is actually kicked out of power in a general election. So the stakes are very high. There's a lot to play out for. So even though we as Muslims have been facing a lot of Islamophobia, there is a lot of a possibility, and if we are able to organise upon that possibility and the resources that we have, we could really do a lot of damage to Islamophobes both in power and those that are trying to essentially cause violence on the streets.
Obviously, you know, what politicians do say, especially on social media, it has a potential of going viral. Because, I mean, there was a spike in hate crimes against Muslims in the UK that in the weeks after Johnson's compared women who wear the burqa to letterboxes. So it tells about the power of politicians, especially when they're trying to spike hate speeches and Islamophobia indeed. But then, in the main, I'll presume that there are some efforts that are being tried in terms of bringing some commonalities and having some common grounds and better understanding, especially when it comes to Muslims in the UK. Organizations like yours, I think you've been doing great work in terms of advocating for justice against justice for Muslims in the UK. But how is it like just livelihoods in general right now in the UK, especially those of Muslims? How is it? What's the latest?
So the general sort of day-to-day life isn't so precarious, mainly because when it comes to the way that Muslim populations live, we tend to live in big numbers in particular areas. So, for example, in the big cities like London, Manchester, Birmingham, we tend to sort of coalesce in big communities, and there's safety in numbers. But in places like where we're a little bit more remote, like say Cardiff or Brighton and whatnot, that's where you start to see more of the hate crime and more of the statistics relative to the population. And also in places like airports, for example, Muslims are routinely sort of profiled by the UK security at airports under Schedule 7. Even if you're British citizens, you can be detained, you can have your passport removed. If you don't have a right to silence. Sort of basic fundamental sort of judicial principles are no longer applicable at that stage. So in these cases, as well as in schools and in workplaces, there are increasing signs of discrimination. So whilst it's not like in your face, it's not on your street present, it's not existential, the signs of encroaching discrimination against Muslims is becoming more and more pervasive, and has been since essentially the war on terror began.
Well, you've indicated that, the Muslim vote in Boris Johnson's constituency can kick him out. Has the process started, or is it still in early stages?
So, yeah, the process has started. The person that's looking to try and replace him, a Labour candidate, is a Muslim himself. I believe he's an immigrant. He's obviously now a UK citizen, but he came overseas with, I believe, his parents. So, that in itself, if he is able to kick Boris Johnson out and become the next MP in that area, that would be a strong message, a strong political message, and to society saying that this kind of politics does not work. And if it does not work, then really those who are looking to use bigotry for power, you best start looking to try and do something else. So it will send a message to those who are looking to leverage that kind of politics, that you need to look at something far better, more inclusive, like multiculturalism, the kind of stuff we had a few decades ago. But in terms of us, in terms of ourselves and others on the ground, there is already a warming up of trying to get Muslims massages and other sort of other partners like churches and other sort of like other organizations to basically send a strong signal to the rest of society and get this Islamophobe out of power.
Indeed. Well, and let's wish you all the best on that, Imran. And basically, we don't really need such leaders that will help stir violence in countries. For today, thank you so much for today. Much appreciated, and take care.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
There you have it.